We're going to treat this untreated pine floor using a mahogany oil glaze. Before you start, make sure that you have everything you need. Boiled linseed oil for the basic treatment. Oil glaze to break the colour. Suitable brushes. A sponge. An empty jar. A stick for mixing. Sanding materials. Tools. A cloth for wiping the floor and your hands. Soap for washing your hands and the brushes. Before starting, we recommend that you first read the application procedures and tips given in our brochure and on our website. The estimated amount of boiled linseed oil per application on untreated wood is 10 to 15 square meters per litre. The estimated amount of oil glaze per coating is 15 to 25 square meters per litre. The oil glaze takes 12 to 24 hours to dry, depending on the ambient temperature and ventilation. The optimal temperature for application is approximately 15 to 25 degrees Celsius. Make sure that the room in which you're treating the floor is well ventilated, not least for drying purposes. Sweep or vacuum the surface so that it's free from dust and dirt. We'll start by treating the surface with boiled linseed oil to obtain a smooth, absorbent working surface. Pour the oil into an empty jar so that it's easy to use. Use a wide brush and make sure it has plenty of oil on it and apply it as evenly as you can over the floor. After treating the entire floor, check that you haven't missed anywhere, as linseed oil is almost colourless. If necessary, make any adjustments. Wipe off the excess oil with a cloth and allow the floor to dry for about a day. When the floor is dry, it's time to sand any irregularities that have occurred due to the wood swelling after applying the oil. Wipe off the sanding dust with a cloth so that the floor is completely clean before applying the glaze. Now it's time to mix the glaze. Open the cans with a spatula so that the lids remain undamaged. An intact lid will keep the can tightly sealed and the contents will last longer. Pour the colourless oil glaze into an empty jar. Our breaking colours are available in a variety of shades, and each shade is measured in a volume that is adapted to 1 litre of oil glaze. Simple. Pour the chosen breaking colour, which in this case is walnut, into the mixing jar. Scrape out all the contents carefully using the mixing stick. Then mix it thoroughly so that the mixture is homogeneous. Also, stir it well regularly during the application, otherwise the breaking colour will sink to the bottom. Use a wide brush to apply the glaze. Work in the glaze along the wood grain and with long brush strokes and apply it as evenly as possible. Treat a couple of boards at a time so that you can make any necessary adjustments before the glaze has had time to dry too much. Wipe off the excess glaze with a cloth so that the surface is smooth and beautiful. Work again along the wood grain to achieve the best results. Continue systematically until the entire floor has been treated. On large floor areas, it's more practical to wipe the floor with a cloth attached to a broom handle in order to apply the glaze completely evenly over the entire floor. Allow the floor to dry for about a day. Due to the fact that the glaze is semi-transparent, the thicker the layer of glaze you add, the darker the tone becomes. If a darker tone is what you want, then simply repeat the treatment in the same way as before. Make sure that you stir the glaze every now and then and apply it as evenly as possible. We're only treating part of the floor here, and we've masked off part of it to show the difference between 1 and 2 applications. After removing the masking tape, it's easy to see the difference. If you want an even more intense shade, simply continue the treatment a few more times. Make sure the can containing the glaze is sealed and airtight so that it can be stored. Mark what the can contains so that you can identify it later on in the paint store. After the glaze has dried for about a day and you're satisfied with the shade, it's time to add a final coating of colourless glaze oil to get a shinier and stronger surface. The floor is now saturated with the colour shade, so it won't absorb very much more. Apply the glaze oil with a sponge and wipe off any excess with a cloth. To avoid spontaneous combustion, soak all the cloths that have been in contact with the oil and seal them in a waste disposal bag. Wash the brushes and your hands with soap and water. It's worthwhile to look after your brushes, as a good brush is an expensive item. A used, well-looked-after brush is also better to work with than one that is brand new. If you're planning to use your brushes again in a few days' time, then they don't need to be washed but simply placed in raw linseed oil to prevent them from drying out. As stated previously, there are several different colour tones to choose between to suit different environments.